Orgasmic Terrorist, a podcast about acceptance around becoming authentic within our sexual exploration. Orgasmic Terrorist.
Welcome to Orgasmic Terrorist. Jenna and Sarah's here.
Hi, guys.
It's been a while. I know you guys are wondering if we actually fell off the face of the planet, but we have a story to tell you. There was, about the time we did our last recording, there was some tension building, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Tension building between the two of us. We have a lesson to teach you guys. About a couple months back, Jenna and I started to disconnect, and we both started to, what the hell's going on? Why is she doing that? Instead of going to each other, I know you would probably want to phrase it differently. Like, instead of me picking up the phone and going, Jenna, this is how I'm feeling right now, help me through it. Or, Jenna, I'm feeling this when you said this. Because one of the things I love about what you have taught us over the years on Orgasmic Terrorists is that there are several things. There's communication, and in communication, if I'm venting, especially if I'm a venter, that I'm venting because I need a vent, I'm venting because I need some assistance, or I'm venting, check in with me. And I love that because I just need a vent, because even hearing my own voice sometimes, I fix my own problem, right?
Right.
Or I hear how stupid I'm sounding. I'm like, what the fuck? Did I just say that? Have you ever done that? I was telling a story to somebody and I started to ramble and I'm like, what the fuck are you saying? Back up. Listen to yourself, and then like going, wait, I'm off track. Do you want to add, you want to put into your part of this, our part of this?
Yeah, I think we have a lot going on in our lives, right? We have personal lives, we have professional lives. Our lives, you and mine, are intertwined quite inextricably, right? We're best friends. I work for you in your business. We are trying to craft and create this whole new wonderful program for adults with disabilities and sex education. I've got my own stuff going on with my clients, and sometimes that pressure builds, and one little thing, if I'm not in the right mood, or if you're not in the right mood, or if something's happened, or you're a messy human and a comment is made, sometimes it's hard to remove that ego and not take it as, this is how this person feels about me. And so once you start down that path, it becomes a pretty slippery slope. And I just want to say, for my part, is yes, I understand that I teach this as a living, that I understand the fundamental need and how to use communication to avoid these things. I'm still just a human. And there are times when I cannot rise to that challenge. I cannot do the things that I espouse that we must do, or is the right thing to do, or is healthy to do, or any of those things. Sometimes, even with our best foot forward, we slide into old habits. It just depends on where we're at and what's going on. And again, it's been a lump of coal for a while between you and I, with everything, all of these outside pressures, all of these things that we're trying to do together, as well as what we're experiencing personally. So that's my part, was I just slid into the story.
I think it's interesting. My part in this was that I would get either a comment would hurt my feelings, or from everything outside in the world, it doesn't matter. And rather than turning to you as a friend, or turning to you like, oh, this really bothered me, how do I handle this, or whatever, I didn't. I just took it in and I piled onto it, and then I piled more on it. And then by the time I realized, I was deep in this well of pity in a way, and like, woe is me, look what's happening to me. I know that I couldn't get myself out of it. I remember I turned to one of my best friends. We were sitting on my back patio and I was telling him the story, and he was wanting to interject, and he's like, wait, I'm like, no, wait till I get to the end of my story.
Yeah.
Stopping him from telling me whatever insight he had. And he's like, wow, you're really stuck in it. And I'm like, I'm stuck in it. And so then I get to the end of the story, and he goes, you've done everything you think you could do, because you only can see your point of view. And he goes, so here's what I need you to do. And it was really super sweet. He goes, first off, what do you want in the end? At that point, I was angry at everybody, and talking to you wasn't an idea. It was, nope, she's not going to listen. And I was already building a story that it was already a failure. And he turned around and he goes, so you need to decide what you want. And then you may have to eat humble pie, or you may not, or you may just have to dig your heels in and let everything go. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So then you and I went to lunch and we cried and we laughed. We argued. We even made somebody move without us trying.
She looked like a bitch anyway.
She was like a total Karen. And then we cried and then we laughed. And now we realize when I start to feel that feeling, I stop and call you and say, I'm feeling this again. And whatever story I want to start building in my head, I stop it. And I actually started using it in my personal life, like with my mother. She started to build a story about something. I'll go, stop, tell me what's going on. And then let's not build that story out. Let's not add to it. Because one of my other friends used to say, oh, that's the story you have in your head, which I took very derogatory. Like he was condescending to me.
And he might have been.
And I hated it. So then when people started to use the word story after that point, oh, that's the story in your head. Or even if it was as innocent as you're building that story, I would take it as that's the story in your head. And I would immediately give a negative connotation to it. But then when I stopped and I put it back, and then I'm like, no, actually, it's true. I am building the story in my head.
But so you're not wrong. And I want to just add a little verbiage to the beginning of that to make it less condescending.
Right.
I want to remind everybody that the state that you are in drives the story that you are building in your head. So it could have been something as innocuous, something that just sets you off. You were also not sleeping, not eating, not really having relations with people. I'm getting emails at 3 a.m. and then 6 a.m. And I'm like, I can't do this. And I think that's where I fell off was I am here with you all the way across the board. But this tired state that you are in is not healthy. It's not conducive to being productive. It's not conducive to being open to conversation. It's not conducive. So that's a story I was telling myself instead of trying to reach out to you and being, hey, I see these things in you and it's causing concern for me. I didn't know how to say that. I felt like I was on eggshells and I didn't want to lob the water balloon that was going to shatter everything beneath my feet. So that's my responsibility in it. But again, that's the state that I was in, was out of concern for you and what was going on, but also out of understanding of, look, you're trying to build a new business. I know what your potential loss would be. So it's that fine line. So everybody needs to remember that the state that you're in at any given time, if you're in a completely great mood and somebody makes some off-color comment, most likely you're going to be able to just be like, meh, I don't care. That's a you problem. When we're not at our best, when we're exhausted, when we're hungry, when we're just running on fumes, anything, even a nice comment can be that Molotov cocktail to start a story in our heads. And then, yeah, it gets really hard because especially when you're upset, you go down that rabbit hole real fucking fast. It's not something that it's like falling through a crevasse. You just drop 300 feet in minutes. And so it gets really hard to climb out when you are down at the bottom and you don't have the effort or the energy to be able to start building that ladder back up. You just keep sliding down that slope and it's really hard to dig out. Again, I can't even say like, hey, make sure that when this happens again, you remind yourself. It's not that simple. It's very simple to know these things when we're not in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, because our rational brain is working for us, right? When we get into that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, those two disconnect and anything that comes out of your mouth is not going to land well. If the other person is in that triggered state, it's not going to land well for them either. Two things that stood out in our conversation was one of the people, and I don't know if this is the same person without saying their name, was like, do you want to be right or do you want your best friend back? And that is the same conversation that my husband and I were having over here. And I wasn't wanting to be right as much as just acknowledge what I'm trying to say to you. But I certainly was like, I just want my fucking friend back. If this ends, this podcast would end. Our business relationships would end. I'm losing my best friend. It felt very insurmountable. It felt very sad and scary.
That's what I was feeling over here at the same time. The podcast, you and I love this thing, and I love it more than I sometimes want to admit. I love being able to talk to you guys. I love being able to learn from you. I love being able to take what we put out in the world and let it have its own life. We get emails that people love this thing. They miss us. I had told you about the gentleman at the bathhouse that I had flogged, and I went to a house party recently, and he was there, and he goes, "Oh my God, you were the best flog I've ever had." The only one I ever had. He goes, "And I'm your greatest fan." And oh my God. So I love all of that. And yeah, when I was telling my friend who is an avid listener, he was, "I haven't really caught up lately, but I guess I need to." And I'm, "Yeah, you should." Before. And he goes, "No, you're going to figure this out." I'm like, "I know I'm going to figure it out. But the problem is, do you want to be right? Or do you want to sit in this muck? Or do you want to have your friend back?" And I go, "I want my friend back. My friend back, hands down." But at the time, and I kept saying this, I couldn't see around the tree. There was this huge tree in front of me, and all I could see to the left and to the right was a tree, this big burden. I couldn't see the forest. I couldn't see my way around it. All I could see was a tree. And I sat in that. And he's like, "You're going to have to pull way back. You're standing right at the tree going, fuck this.
Yeah.
Fuck this. There's no way around." And he goes, "And you're smarter than that in a lot of aspects." And so I did. I had to take steps back. And then I had to do two things. I had to do the negative and the positive in my own life. I drew up the negative plan and the positive plan. And then I let whatever happen. And so I took a step forward and see what path opened up. And of course, that's when you and I sat down and had our lunch. And I had to tell you one of my favorite things about the whole lunch, and this is going to make you laugh, because it actually cracked me up, was when you said, this is something you had told me, that you and your husband were talking about, and he goes, "I don't know, she maybe needs to get laid." Desperately needed to get laid at the same time. That energy of sex was missing.
He did.
And I finally did.
And I don't want my husband to get shit for that. He knows Sarah, and he knows how important intimacy and sex and all the things are to both yourself and to me. And to have that missing from your life, that was his comment, was like, "Yes, she really does need this." So it wasn't a misogynistic piece of shit male comment. He was just like, "I know Sarah, she needs to get laid. It'll be fine."
And she did. And she finally got laid, and she got laid good, actually. And then I did see the energy change. This is going to be that other side of my life that I had been suppressing since my breakup 2 years ago. I needed to have a good beating, and I hadn't had one of those in a while either.
Yes.
We're submissive. That's
a little
submissive.
attitude adjustment is all.
Right? And I actually had a really good one recently, and it was a great start for our first time together, but it was enough for me to go, "Oh yeah, I miss this. I miss this."
I think it's good that you took some time off. I think it's important that you now know how much that is a part of your life and how important that is to your mental health and your life in general, and what that puts into story-wise. I don't like that any of this happened, but I am grateful for the growth opportunities that came out of it.
That was a big thing. If we never had this happen, would we appreciate as much? I appreciate us more now because I value you more than I did before, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a healthy way to look at it. There's still everything in me that wishes that we hadn't done any of that, that none of it had happened. You are correct in the outcome, yay, but still, I appreciated the shit out of you before. So, it was, I get what you're saying, for sure.
I guess, I guess I realized in all of this, it's not that maybe appreciate isn't the right word. I think you're right. I think I have more respect for you. A year ago, you and I went to Summer Spank, and I invited my friend that we were talking about, and you were holding my hand pretty much the whole time when I was nervously trying to accept I was bringing a vanilla person into my twisted world. And I was so nervous, shaky nervous. It wasn't that I thought he would shun me or judge me. Yes, some judgment. But I was, right, it was the story in my head. But at the same time, it was letting a wall down that I'm not comfortable letting down. And so when that happened, of course, my relationship with that person changed. It drastically shifted because I let him into another level of who I am. That's great. That was awesome. I think that happened with us. I think when we had this moment, we both let the walls down to have the conversation. Our ego, we dropped the stories basically, and we looked at each other. And I think that helped me grow or love you even more because one, you accepted me, even in all my flaws. Just like him accepting me in my weird, twisted world, you accepted me with my flaws and you would let me be human. And in my head, people don't do that. They don't let people be human and they judge people and they push people away or they walk away or they give up. And that's probably because a lot of people have done that to me over the years. I've been told by our sweet friend Tiffany that we had on the show. She said, Sarah, your walls go up so fast. Your defense mechanism is amazing. Not that it's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's understandable.
Yeah.
And she's been really trying to work on me too, to not be so quick to push things away. And I do think it's part of that fight, flight, fawn, freeze, all those steps. We fuck our own selves up.
we do break our own hearts quite a bit. Yes.
Oh, that's a good statement, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
The best part for me in that meeting, you and I had the whole conversation, and there was a moment where I think you were not really calling me out, but calling out what you had seen. And I was like, I literally showed up today thinking that I was getting fired. And you were like, I would never do that. And I was like, why would I know that? We haven't talked in 3 months. We are building a business together and we haven't talked in 3 months. There's no way that wasn't the thought in my head. I got there early. I did some breathing. My mantra was remain curious and open, remain curious and open, remain curious and open. Because the minute that you start, I would have started taking on my identity out of what you were saying. It would have been horrible. It would not have gone that way. So I had to keep reminding myself, this is not about you. This is about where she's at. You need to be open and honor her feelings and her emotions, regardless of whether you agree or not. This is not about you. This is her floor. She's talking. And hopefully she can do the same for me. And I think the best part really, which you should have seen your face. You're like, I don't know how to get back there. I don't know how to get back there. What did I say? Do you want to be best friends again? And you were like, yeah. And I go, okay. And you're like, no, but I don't know how to get back there. I was like, do you want to be best friends again?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah. And I go, okay.
No, I mean, that's what we need to do.
And that's it. That was it. None of the rest of it mattered. We didn't have to continue the conversation. I didn't need to roll out my side, my thoughts, my opinions. I had stated a couple things while you were talking. Okay. I don't feel the need to perpetuate or continue to harbor. If you're telling me that your honest intention is you want to do this with me again, I'm not going to worry about the rest. It wasn't something that was so terrible that I had to walk away. Clearly, if it was going to continue, then yeah, I think parting ways would have been what would have happened. But that's not what you were giving me. You were giving me, this is what's been going on for me. This is what I'm frustrated by. This is what I want. This is what I've put into effort-wise to continue this. Again, just, I want my friend back. I want to have you in my life. I don't care what other people's opinions are, whether your friends understand why we're friends, whether my friends understand what they're friends. And I'm not saying that was happening.
No, I get it.
I'm just saying I don't care if you're somebody that I deem valuable in my life. And I'm not saying as a using type of valuable, but I don't want to let that go. I whittle and craft my close friends very carefully. They're my family. And so I was looking at this huge deficit from this chair that you filled at my table for the last 3 years. And I was like, how the fuck am I going to fill that? Now she has an empty chair at her table too. How the fuck is she going to fill that?
And I felt a loss. I think a lot of the time during that incident, even the stories in my head or even the story that I was experiencing, we would be in a meeting or we would do this. And then the story was so bad that it was debilitating. So talk about lack of sleep. I was sleeping until that week that we made the time for the lunch. I stopped sleeping. I was worried. My stomach, I woke up the middle of the morning that we were going to go meet and I spent time in the bathroom, which I don't normally spend a lot of time in the bathroom, but I was in the bathroom trying to throw up and having other issues. And it was so miserable because I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be in that spot. I wanted to be back where we were, or future us. Business is stable and you and I are going on cruises or going to do something fun.
BDSM cruise, here we come.
Right. I wanted it to be all over, and I wanted it to be over with a beautiful bow on it.
Yeah.
Even if the bow was crooked. I wanted it to be all done and wrapped up and put away. But we had to get through the meeting. And I had to tell you, the hardest steps that I ever had to walk was into that restaurant and all of this.
Dude, I'm going to be very honest and be like, I super counted on you being a little late. I'm always early. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have a cup of coffee. If I need to, I'm going to go out and smoke. I'll have time. I just want to get comfortable in this space. I did try and get us away from people. It did not work. When I got there, there was quite a few people. And I feel bad. I shouldn't have called that chick a bitch, but she was not. She was definitely not a very nice person.
I'm going to tell you right now, her face was bitchy. She
looked like she ate a dirty asshole. She didn't like any of it. She made a point of kind of huffily getting up. She hung in there longer than I thought she would. We weren't being loud and we weren't being rude. Definitely some cuss words were coming out every once in a while, but it wasn't like this yelling, screaming, accusatory disruption in this little restaurant. We're having a conversation and there's not a lot of room. So you're definitely partaking in some of this. But yeah, the minute that other table came up, she was up and out. And that made us laugh even more.
Well, and I think that's what broke the tension too, in a weird way. Because I think after that point, we both like, bitch.
Yeah. Loser, you can't handle a little conversation.
Especially between women. What do you
know? I want to encourage people to always remember, again, the state that's in your head drives the story that you're telling yourself. And look, thoughts are thoughts. It doesn't make them true. Intrusive thoughts happen all the time. They tell you how shitty you are, how shitty they are, how they don't care for you, or how they're disrespecting you, or how you deserve better. I'm not saying that at times those thoughts aren't true. I'm saying in this case, they weren't true. But both of us in our heads were going, this is how she feels about me. I'm not worth anything to her. This is how she's treating me. This is what she says to me. Where's my friend? Where's this person that I adore and love in this cold ass shell sitting across from me? For both of us. That's the end goal, is knowing and trusting this person that no matter how mad you get, you can at least have a conversation about it. I'm not saying that it's always going to end well. I can't make that promise, but I can promise you that if you do have to have conversations like Sarah and I did, it's going to be worth it, because at the end, you're going to know that you've tried everything to do repair. If that's what you want. If your end goal is to be, hey, we have to cut ties and go, then fine. That's totally allowable and acceptable too. But if it is something that is important to you that you don't want to end, you owe it to yourself and to this other person the time of day to have these conversations. And it is uncomfortable and I hated every second of it, but also it felt like we were finally taking those steps to get through the forest. And unbeknownst to both of us, when we were both standing at opposite ends of the forest, staring at the same fucking tree, we walked out of there hand in hand, out of the forest, away from the trees. And then we're fine, right? Now we can see the forest for the tree. It's something that's worth your time, regardless of what the end result is. It's worth putting in your energy and effort to know at the end that you literally have tried to do everything that you can. And then you can be at peace with whatever that looks like at the end. But I'm grateful that was not the case for you and I, that we had this conversation. I'm going to be very honest with you. When you brought up this subject of doing this for this podcast, I was like, oh, I don't know that's a good idea. We are only a little ways away from that. And though we're fine, I worry about triggering feelings for either of us, whatever that is. But here we are having this conversation and I actually feel even better. And I could have said that to you. I could have been like, I'm a little worried, instead of just being, okay, okay. Because I had to have plenty of conversations around it. I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea. I understand communication is fine. I understand we talk about it all the time. I'm a little nervous about how this is going to go for both of us. But here we are again, showing up for each other and in front of whoever's listening, and they get to hear how these things can end in a positive way. And I just think that's the most important thing.
I agree. I think the reason why I suggested it was, one, I wanted to be open and honest with our listeners, but two, I knew we would show up for each other. I knew that you would turn on this beautiful person I see in front of me, and you would show people that this is a good place. And I love this new statement. The state in your head drives the story. I love that. Sometimes I don't know what we're going to say when we turn the mics on.
I never know where the hell we're going. This is not a scripted show, with the exception of information for the BDSM laws and information. But this is not a scripted show. We don't know where we're going. These aren't planned. It's like hey, you want to talk about this? Let's do it.
Let's do it. And then sometimes they're fun and sometimes they're serious. But at the same time, I think, honestly, one of the stories we need to tell is this. One, I loved how you showed it for me that day. I loved how that when I did walk in that place, I was afraid that I was going to walk out without a friend. I was afraid. I was scared shitless.
Agreed.
But then I walked in, I saw you there, and to sit in front of my friend and tell her my feelings, my raw feelings, to let that wall down was amazing. I wouldn't want to ever do it again. But it was amazing once we got through it, how it felt, that I felt safe, I felt held, I felt seen, I felt
really
heard.
Feel like it gives foundation to if it does happen again. Because again, the state that you're in drives the story. And we are under a lot of pressure right now with the state of the world and trying to do this business and this podcast. And I have clients outside of our two businesses together. You have clients outside of our two businesses together. We are making things work. Pressure, lack of sleep, lack of diet, lack of this, lack of getting beat, lack of fucking sex. All of these things put into the state that we're in. I can't tell you how many times when we were not talking where it's just, I fucking need to call her and I need her advice on this. I want to share this with her. I need to noodle with her. I need to vent. You did it to me the other day where you're like, I just need you to fucking ask me what I need. I was like, oh, I think I was trying, but you're yelling.
I was so angry. I was so triggered. It was this one little statement, but I felt comfortable enough to call you. I'm like, I need a vent. I need a vent or I'll blow.
You were already well on the way from the minute that I answered that phone. And that's what I was trying to do, was like, am I showing up for solutions or am I listening to a vet? And I was like, hey, and then you finally were just like, I just need you to listen to me, vet. And I was like, okay, I was trying to ask. and that was fine.
But then I calmed down. And so the thing is, I realized that sometimes I have to work through the process. And then I calm down. And then I sit there and go, oh, you sound like a dork. Or other things, whatever. It doesn't matter. I just needed to get it out of my head, because I know in the past, if I go quiet, I'm stuffing it most of the time.
Yes.
But I realized lately, one of the things I wanted to do with myself is I go quiet to process, especially with employees. But with employees, I vent. If I vent out loud, it's not fair to them because they don't understand what's going on necessarily. So I turn around and I'm like, you can't vent to every employee what you're feeling in the moment. And so I'm learning how to shut it down. Try to. Somebody said this the other day in one of my meetings. My face is my palate.
Yeah.
So just because you shut it down doesn't mean your face isn't showing what you're feeling.
Your outside voice is on your fucking face. So it's not like that. Is the other thing, is that we have to remember that how we present ourselves in those moments also adds to that state and story for the other person. So if I'm trying to tell you something and you again look like the lady next to us that ate a dirty asshole on your face, I am going to tell myself that, hey, fuck you, you don't mean anything because look at your fucking face. If you feel that way, then fix your fucking face. And I've told you that before, and you've told me that before. And so we have to be mindful. I really tried that day to just keep a neutral face.
You did? You did really good, by the way.
Still breathe and not look like I was being a cold cunt on the other side, but keep a neutral face. Because one little errant eye roll or side look or lemon mouth is not going to be conducive to what's going on, right? And that's very hard for you and I. I can shut the fuck up all I want, but my outside face is on. It's not inside, it's outside. So
that's where it comes down to, I need to process. I'll say what's on my mind. You'll give me your opinion, and then I'll process. And that's something that where we're at right now. Like the other day, we were having this conversation and you had pointed out that your tone was there. My whole family has tone problems. I'm sorry. I wish there was a shirt that says, don't pay attention to my tone because my words are more important.
That's actually a genius fucking shirt, and we should do that immediately.
Yes. Because my son gets in trouble at work all the time because he cannot control his tone. It has a lot to do with his autism. He has never realized there was a tone there because there's that disconnect, right? Whenever him and I get in arguments, it's usually because he had a tone. And I'm like, dude, your tone said this, but your words said this. And he goes, well, I meant this. And I'm like, which was what his words said.
So generational trauma is a thing because I do believe that's the same issue you have with your mother.
I do.
And that she had with her mother.
And what she has with me. My mom has it with me because I go down on my tone and then she's like, why are you talking to me passive aggressively? And I'm like, I'm not. I just choosing my words carefully. Tones is a serious thing, and I wish there was a way to filter out our tones. Is there an app for that?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to buy you one of those face masks that has the whole light up, and we can just put a happy face on that mask, and then you can do whatever the fuck you want behind it, and it'll be fine. Tone I have throughout my life as well been like your tone. And here's the deal. If you were a man with a tone, you'd be a fucking leader. If you're a woman with a tone, you're a bitch. It makes me upset to be called out constantly about my tone, but there is something to be said about that. And it does affect how things land with other people. And when we get very passionate, that tone is going to be there, but we have to also then be responsible and be mindful around how, when we are impassioned, things come out. So you and I have both held each other accountable. Do you want to know if I feel you are landing with a tone, even though I know that in your beautiful heart, this is not what you're saying, but this is what your face is saying, and this is what your tone is saying. Do you still want to know? And if you do, how do you want to know? Because that is such a thing to be called on. There's so much trauma behind that for both you and I, that even if I was to do exactly what you say and text you to say tone, that could still incite violence. So it's
or trauma,
and I see how that looks.
But yeah, it's like somebody saying calm down when you're already upset. I got a what? I have a friend that she keeps calling me like, don't tell me to calm down. I'm like, I wasn't going to when she was upset. And I turn around, I'm like, okay, you need to do you. You need to vent. Let's vent. Like, we'll get to the end where you need to be. But right now, I'm not going to tell you to calm down. I'm going to tell you to just go right through whatever you're feeling. But at some point, it becomes cyclical for certain people where they just get stuck in it.
Yeah.
And finding a break would be ideal to break that cycle. And I think in my head, I'm trying to do that all the time when I get quiet. I'm like, okay, I'm breaking the cycle. I'm not going to sit and dwell in it. I'm going to listen to what was said, process. So do you remember Big Bang Theory, Sheldon and Amy Farrah when they had that relationship agreement and they had agreed that when they were on a date night that they would be present, and he was really stuck in the zone of something, and she's like, you agreed. Yep, I knew, and I have a loophole. And he picks out a stick with his face on it that he's smiling. I think we should do that. Put a stick up in front of our face as an indicator. We're okay. We're just processing or something like that.
I want to add to that whole thing too of you're wishing that it could be this way type of thing. A lot of times, and what I teach myself and try and remember to practice, although I'm not always capable of doing so, is somatic breath work. When you are in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, that's when most people feel very thin and stretched and they're just, So if you can do some somatic breath work in those times, and that's just some deep breathing and releasing exercises, it doesn't have to last very long, but it actually allows your brain to calm center and you go back into your window of tolerance, right?
Calls the lid back down.
Yeah. Yeah. When you blow your top.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So then it comes back down and it recenters you and you're able to be rational again. So that's always a big help and something that I teach my clients in stressful situations. Even if you're at your work, mostly it's just you're feeling pressured to have a response. And so you go instantly into that flip your top, fight freeze mode. And then anything that comes out of your mouth is not going to be wonderful. It's not going to work for you. So it's just about building in a couple seconds of time. If you can squeeze in one deep breath and one exhale, sometimes it's enough just to get you out of that I'm going to murder you phase. Or I'm going to just lose my shit or whatever. It's really important to try and do. We're just trying to build in a little space between your mouth and what your brain is telling you at that moment.
Yeah. No,
Your brains are assholes.
I guess they aren't they?
You know what's weird to me is our brain literally drives our entire meat suit, and yet we talk about it in third person as if this isn't all its fault.
Oh my God, I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah, my meat suit's name is Jenna. The fuck is my brain's name?
I guess we're wanting to share that little bit of that story so that everybody is aware of that we are here. We're not gone. We're going to stay here as long as we can. The state of the world. You're going to hear our wonderful voices and we're going to be here together. I guess it's time to go tell everybody to go be good humans.
Go be good humans and be a good human to yourself right now. I think that's the important part. And be a good human for people. Don't stand idly by. Be a good human for others. It's really important right now.
Yes.
Hi, guys. Thanks for listening and supporting our podcast. You can listen to us on Spotify and iTunes, and of course, on our website at orgasmicterrorist.com. Please don't forget to help us out by sharing our podcast and leaving a 5-star review. As always, you can send us an email with your questions and comments to orgasmicterrorist@gmail.com.